Good afternoon, everyone. I see our attendees are starting to sign in. Before we begin, we are just going to allow a few moments for the rest of the attendees to sign in. And while we do that and give them the chance to get on, I'm going to ask those of you online, if you would like to just make use of the chat function, just pop us a message with your name and where you are signing in from this afternoon. So welcome everybody. For those of you online, we are just allowing a few moments for the rest of the attendees to sign in. And while we do that, we are asking you guys to just use the chat function, pop us a message and let us know who you are and where you are signing in from. I see we have Juanita Cup from the Eastern Cape, Zamo Kushle from UKZN. Welcome everybody. Thank you for signing in. We are just allowing a moment or two for the rest of the attendees to sign on. And while we do that, for those of you just signed in, we are using the chat function just to say who we are and where we are signing from. We once again have Annie from Sweden. Welcome. Just a quick note, Annie has attended all of the webinars hosted for GBV. This is the 8th session and Annie is joining us for the 8th time. If you'd like to include that in the chat function as well, just let us know how many sessions you've attended. If you haven't, you're more than welcome to watch the recordings that are posted on the Golden Key Southern Africa YouTube channel. We have Eva from Mombela, welcome. Shirley, good afternoon to you too. We have Leon Roots from UNISA in Pretoria, Mohadi from Limpopo. Shirley's from Johannesburg, thanks Shirley. Okay, it looks like we are almost ready to begin. I'm going to attempt your name. Please forgive me if I mispronounce this. Asikelelwe from Rhodes University. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Then we have Tracy from Pretoria as well. Welcome, everybody. Okay, I'm going to start the session. And with that, I'm going to welcome everyone again. Thank you for signing in this afternoon. I have the honor to introduce to you our MC for today, or MCs, which is Leon Roots from UNISA. And Leon is the program convener of postgrad program of social and behavior studies, HIV and AIDS within the Department of Sociology. He is also the program manager of Teresano collaborative projects focusing on the advocacy of diversity, equity, belonging and inclusions in communities, curriculum and workplaces. Currently, he is the convener of the university's Employee Health and Wellness Working Group and has been involved in this field in various sectors over the years, including the development of workplace policies and program frameworks. His MA focused on pathways to manhood, while he is currently working on his PhD, which will present some guidelines on how to implement male-friendly employee health and wellness workplace programs. He's also served as chairperson of SAFAID South Africa between 2015 and 2020 and provided strategic advice and support to different organizations in both the public and private sector on HIV, health and wellness. Before I hand you over to Leon, I'm just going to read Pastor Juanita's bio. So Pastor Juanita Cup is an ordained minister in the Full Gospel Church. She has been a full-time minister for the last 14 years. She is a CPSC Level 5 religious professional. Juanita holds a master's degree in theology dogmatics at Northwest University. In 2017, she was awarded the Northwest Linty de Lange Trophy for Best Ethics Students by the Faculty of Theology. She is currently serving as the Vice President of the Golden Key International Honor Society Alumni Committee in the Eastern Cape. And her hobbies include doing karate, mixed martial arts, singing, songwriting, and doing research. Her passion is to help individuals achieve their goals, and she loves being involved in community upliftment. Juanita's motto in life is never give up. So we welcome Juanita Cup as well as Leon Roots. Leon, over to you.
Thank you, Natasha, and thank you for those bios. I think we can now nearly set it out of our heads as we start to get to know each other, not only as a team working on these very, very exciting webinars, but also, you know, as an audience, I start to recognize names. I get very excited when I see a lot of colleagues coming back to our webinars, and I think it's wonderful that it looks like more or less about 10 people have attended every session so far. And that's a good indication that at least we make it relevant and you really feel that you get value out of this. So today, I just want to first start with welcoming you on behalf of University of South Africa. This is a collaboration with Golden Key South Africa. And this is very important because as a university, we need to build partnerships with organizations like Golden Key so that we can strengthen the whole space of our society transformation, but also to ensure at the end of the day, we make not only kind of theoretical discussions, but we bring it to real life. And this is the nice collaboration between UNISA and Golden Key, is that we both focus a lot on young people, and that our main aim is to help our young people in the current very disruptive society, and a society that is very in stress and actually in a space of being pulled apart by phenomena like gender-based violence. And that this kind of webinars is a conversational space where we, you know, really talk to each other, that we interrogate what some of the research is saying, but we also talk from the heart, where we talk about how does it really affect our lives, as it's something that we all experience and we all have it very close to us. Sometimes we just may not see it because we don't want to see it. So very welcome. I'll hand it over to Janita to also do the welcoming, and I'll step back as to guide the process for today. Thank you. Over to you, Anita.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you very much. And we are very excited to be in this collaborative space with all our partners. And yes, I agree with you that we are moving now from knowledge over to practical application and solution finding. This webinar series is a collaboration between UNISA, Father and Nation, SAF-AIDS, and Vitality Wellness. And it's so true what Leon is saying, that we are in this wonderful, fruitful space, and that we should delve as deep as we can into the issue of gender-based violence in order to make a difference. So for the webinars that we've done, just for those who are attending that are new attendees, we have discussed gender-based violence within the African context, critical engagement. We've discussed the topic of understanding gender-based violence in the context of conflict and violence. We've unpacked gender-based violence in our communities and households and workplaces, where we've given a definition and characteristics for it. We also discussed deconstructing gender norms and roles within gender-based violence within the African context, manhood, masculinities, and gender-based violence, the nature and the types of gender-based violence. And then, of course, our session on Monday was on gender-based violence and young adults in communities. So as a representative for Golden Key Southern Africa, I just want to welcome all our panelists here, all our partners, and especially the attendees, because you are so special to us. We would love to engage with you and learn from your life and your experiences. And today I want to encourage you with Leon, before I hand over to him, to in the Q&A function and in the chat function, please send us your messages, your questions, your responses, because we really want to enter into a dialogue with you. So welcome from Golden Key Southern Africa, and enjoy the session with us. I hand back to Leon Roots. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you, Anita. And yeah, colleagues, we like to also spice up our lives. So we're going to do things a bit differently today. And I hope that this is the kind of momentum that you'd like to see happening. That, you know, we have been, this is now the 8th one, and we're still free to go. And we want to really make it now very engaging. And so today is a bit different than maybe some of you used to it, who have attended most of our sessions. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a video that just really opened the spectrum of sexual harassment, that is the topic for today. That we want to really interrogate this from a lived experience and not only from a kind of a theoretical or even a formal space, because what we often found when we do dialogues on sexual harassment or harassment is that people have different understandings. And what is seen as harassment for one person is seen as caring for another person. There's cultural differences, there's religious differences, there's personality differences, there are genders differences, there are age differences, there are also sexuality differences. And all of this actually makes us aware that it is a very complex phenomenon. And we cannot just stand still on one definition. We need to interrogate it and also contextualize it. Because in our African context, there are so many versions of sexual harassment. And some practice that we may sometimes see, some of us as sexual harassment, is seen as cultural practices. So we need to also interrogate ourselves in this space. How do we sensitively go into conversation with each other, hear each other, and try to find that commonality that makes us to understand sexual harassment. So what we're going to do today is show you first a bit of a video. And the video is very nice in the sense that it just really opened our eyes to how many types of sexual harassment is happening. And it happens maybe very, very every day around us. And then we're going to go into conversation with a panelists who are here, and they are Edith and Lizette, and I'll just introduce them now. And we're going to ask you, please talk to us on the chat, but also in the Q&A if you feel you want to have questions that you want to put, but post them also in the chat, because we really want to make it live. And the point of departure is it's about all of us have experienced harassment, and most of us have experienced some kind of sexual harassment. And it's not only men to women, but it's also women to men, but it's also men to men and women to women. And this is where we need to widen the discussion of what is harassment, and then when does it become sexual? And I think this is where our two main speakers are really excellent people to come in. So I'm going to very, very briefly introduce you to them. The first person is Lizette Leroux. She's currently the manager for social development at the University of South Africa. She has extensive experience working in the field of HIV, student health and wellness, but also to deal with issues of sexual harassment, because often she's the one that leads investigations in the university, where we have also a lot of complexities with power relationships between staff of university versus our students, but we also have among students and among even staff sexual harassment happening. And Lizette is also been a person who have been very active in the field of raising awareness and dealing with gender-based violence over a number of years and number of platforms, in such a way that she is also being seen often that she's advising several organizations, including working for the whole thing of creating a court space for children who have been abused, that their court cases are happening in camera. And that was a big milestone for us in the court case, because colleagues, in the past, you won't believe it, these children had to actually confront their perpetrators face to face. And you can just imagine some of the trauma that they had to experience. She also worked with through correctional service with perpetrators, where she did look at pedophilia. and also look at how does it happen and what is happening with pedophilia in the context of prosecution and also later on reintegration into communities. Currently, she is busy with her master's, and her master's also focus on the phenomenon of gender-based violence in the context of mostly students. Our next speaker is then after that is Edith. Edith is the director of Vitality Health and Wellness, and she is a very seasoned social scientist and a development person, have a track record of working a lot in workplaces, helping with workplace policy and program development in HIV and AIDS, gender, and now also around issues of diversity. She has also brought a bit of a book forward where she looks at the tales of womanhood, and that is about resilience among women. And I think this is something very important that we don't pay attention. How do people cope with these things when there is sometimes no help available? Edith is also a person that works a lot around the issue of empowering other women and young girls, specifically to start their own businesses and becoming entrepreneurs. She is also very enthusiastic and loves cooking with her family and spend time with her family. And she believes at the end of the day that everything that we do is really by the grace of life, and that we should be always thankful for what we have. And she really lives with her husband and her 3 children in Harare in Zimbabwe. So to Lizette and to Edith, thank you so much for being here, and very welcome here. And we're going to have a very nice discussion. My co-chair is Teriso. Teriso is a person that specializes in public health, but she's also working for SAF-AIDS that focus on sexual reproductive health and rights, specifically among young women. And she's been an advocate, she's been a trainer, and she's also a researcher in that field and work in different communities across South Africa. She's also a person that is passionate about life and passionate about helping people. So with that really very broad introduction, I welcome all the people here, and I say, let us have this conversation. So over to Natasha to please put on for us the video and then share with us that we will just watch this video that really let us sit up and take note. Over to you, Natasha.
Hello? It's you again. Gosh, this is the 3rd time today. No, I don't care if this is my once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get the Sucker 3000 vacuum cleaner. Please, just stop harassing me.
Sexual harassment is a type of bullying intended to hurt or intimidate someone. It can include making sexual jokes, comments, or gestures to or about someone, spreading sexual rumors in person, by text, or online, writing sexual messages about people on bathroom stalls or in other public places, showing someone inappropriate sexual pictures or videos, touching, grabbing, or pinching someone in a deliberately sexual way, asking someone to send you naked pictures of herself or himself, pulling at someone's clothing, and brushing up against someone in a purposefully sexual way. If you're being harassed, don't blame yourself. The idea that someone was asking for it because of something they did, said, or were wearing is false and unacceptable. It often can be helpful to start by telling the person doing the harassing to stop. Let him or her know that this behavior is not okay with you. If that doesn't stop the harassment, don't just ignore the behavior. Usually, ignoring it won't make it stop. Instead, tell a trusted adult about it. Telling someone sooner leads to faster results. You should keep a record of the events that have happened. That way you'll have them if your school or family has to take legal action. Remember, no one has the right to sexually harass or bully anyone else, no matter what.
Till next time. Don't forget to visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel to watch more. Bye.
So colleagues, yeah, I hope the video really let us sit upright and realize that even us are maybe doing harassment, and that we don't always be paying attention. How does it affect other people? And it can be sometimes even an inappropriate joke. It could be a glance, a staring. It could be a way that we dismiss somebody, or it could be just that sometimes we make remarks about body shaming, or we just make jokes about some things that they suffer. If they like have mental health, you know, we say it's all in the head and you should just get you out of your head and get right. And all of these things are actually a form of harassment. So let's start first with the first question to Lizette. Lizette, you have dealt with many cases of harassment and sexual harassment. Can you just help us to understand, firstly, what is harassment? When do harassment happen based on your understanding and your experience working in this field? Please, Lizette.
Thank you, Leon, and thank you to the team and to all the participants. I think being here on the eve of a long weekend speaks to our true commitment to really address this issue. So particularly thank you to the participants. Leon, you know, in the trainings and in the cases we dealt with, we always say there's one key that unlocks the door of harassment, and that is unwanted. For sexual harassment, sexual attention. So any form of unwanted sexual harassment or sexual attention. And often it's very difficult and the lines are very blurred when you speak about that, because often people don't know that it's sexual harassment. And let me give you an example. Somebody might say to you, "You smelling nice today." And I might say, "Thank you very much, that's a compliment." Another person might feel offended by that because it's a personal invasion and it has nothing to do with the work that you're at or the course that you're studying and so forth. So with that type of blurred lines, we often say to people, if you don't like it, you need to indicate it. I don't want you to pay me a compliment of this and this and this nature. Or what I will do, I will take offense to it. If that person then do it again, then there's a very big ground for a case of sexual harassment to happen. And then obviously there's much more overt types of sexual harassment that we are subjected to, and that's any form of touching. It can be on any part of your body if you don't like it, but with sexual misconduct, as they label it in the labor law or in the many policies that we work with, that becomes sexual misconduct. So that is then touching of any private organs, any sexual organs, and or any form of kissing. We also, with sexual misconduct, goes a bit further and say, okay, we entered into the space of social media and internet and cyber. So that in itself, any form of message or video or any pictures that you send through the internet that has any sexual no-hands to it is sexual harassment. I think with harassment in general, and this is where we need to always be very specific, because if we only speak harassment, it's a very big issue. You get racial harassment, which has another component to it. And that is any derogatory reference to your racial identification or to your sexual orientation. That can also be seen as a form of harassment. We can also venture into the space of bullying with harassment, and that has another form in itself, where a person is specifically targeted over a period of time by derogatory comments or with unfair expectations, for instance, can also be a form of bullying. So with all of this, often there's one dynamic present, and that's power, right? So when you combine the sexual attention with the power, then you get another dimension of sexual harassment. That's why often with cases, and it's very difficult, let's say I'm going to use the university space. It can be a banking environment, a mining environment, any environment. The supervisor or the lecturer or the professor or the vice principal or the CEO has an affair with their secretary, for instance. Then it might happen for a while, and then there's a breakup, and then she comes and she claims sexual harassment. The dynamic there is very important, because often that can be seen as sexual harassment given the power dynamic that's involved, although there was consent. So it's very blurry. I would love my colleague to also speak on that, but just a few pointers from me.
Thank you, Lizette. I think you just opened the floor very nicely for us to really realize, maybe we must just pay attention. How do we actually engage with people? I can talk from experience. I was once in a church, and one of the kind of habits that they had was always hugging. When you come into the front door, there was somebody at the front door always hugging you. I love hugs, but I prefer to choose who to hug. And I at one stage just had to stop it and say to people, I feel very uncomfortable when people hug me, because I just felt it was not sincere, and I really didn't feel okay. And they took offense, and they thought I was now this unchristian person, and I don't have brotherly love and things like that. But that's the kind of things that we need to really even interrogate with each other when we start to do things that we don't think about of what is the unwanted, as you mentioned. So Edith, on that note, working in the workplaces, I want to just get a bit of a sense. How big is this phenomenon around harassment? Let's start with harassment, and then we'll go a bit later on to the sexual harassment. But this harassment, what kind of harassments are happening at workplaces? Can you share with us, please?
Thank you for that, Leon, and thank you for a great intro, Lizette. And I'm happy that today we get to interrogate the forms of harassment. In the conversations that we've had so far, we've looked at the sexual and gender-based harassment within the workplace, but we haven't quite looked at the other forms of harassment within a workplace context, and which are happening all the time. And maybe you might be in that workplace and not even understand or identify it as a form of harassment. And Lizette has already spoken to some of these, and they can include negative comments about a colleague's personal or religious beliefs, or try to convert them from their religion. These days, most of us are really working in diverse workplaces where you have a mix of Christian, Hindu, Muslim, African traditional religion even, and to try and tell others that the way you worship is wrong, you should do it this way. And in my experience, I've been to workplaces where I've been asked to come and diffuse situations where people are in disagreement because of religious issues. And what comes to mind is one example of one workplace where they had a canteen services offered at this workplace. And the workers' chairperson was Hindu. And because of a disagreement with management over even wage issues, he decided to start having conversations with the other Hindu community in the workplace to say, why are we going to the canteen and eating with these Christians? We want separate eating facilities and a separate canteen, and started making a whole lot of noise about that. And what you got was that it created a toxic and an unhealthy work environment where lines were drawn between Christian and Hindu or Muslim, and to the extent that they wanted their own cutlery, their own pots. And it was just a case of not appreciating diversity in the workplace can really affect even the productivity and even affect a benefit, because at the end of the day, that employer then decided that it wasn't worth it and actually ended up canceling the canteen services, which meant that both Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, everybody lost out from free lunch, which was being provided by the employer. So you find that there are a lot of those examples which are often racist comments, nicknames, remarks about an individual's skin color or ethnic traits, offensive gestures, and making offensive references to individuals' mental or physical abilities. It can also include body shaming. You know, a lot of, in this day and age, there's a lot of talk about wellness, getting fit, and sometimes some workplace programs, workplace wellness programs have also tried to motivate people to lose weight or that type of thing, but it has also turned into some forms of harassment, even when they have the biggest loser competitions. I've heard people who've come back and said there's a lot of body shaming and people are laughing at them, or now when they go to the canteen, people say, how can you lose weight when you eat so much? And those type of things are happening in workplaces. And sometimes people do it without even realizing that they're being offensive, and that it impacts negatively on the individual that they say these comments to, and is derogatory and not appreciated and not accepted. And there's also what I can call ageism or age-related comments. You also find that there's a lot of digitalization, and we're working in spaces where, even because of COVID, things have become fast-paced into digitalization, working from home. And you find that colleagues in the workplace who are a certain age demographic are not maybe picking up as quickly as the younger ones, and they find that they get laughed at, and, oh, you're slowing us down, oh, how many times do you want us to show you how to work teams, and that type of thing. It's all forms of harassment, and people really feel bad about themselves and feel that maybe they are letting the team down. So it's all those gray areas which are not clearly spelled. And maybe one last comment for the non-sexual forms of harassment. I want to comment, Leon, about dress code. Wearing clothes that could be offensive to a particular ethnic group, or maybe deemed to be inappropriate dress code for the workplace, or inappropriate, or might lead to offensive or sexual harassment because of dress code. It's another thing that we need to pay attention to within the workplace. I'll end there for now.
Thank you, Edith. I think you just help us to go deeper, because we just recently in South Africa had a case, I think 2 weeks ago, of a lady entering a restaurant, and the manager asked her to please leave because the way she was dressed. He claimed that statement, right of admission, give them the right to determine what is suitable and what is not suitable. And all what she had a denim on and a bit of a top that revealed a bit on top. But if you look at the photo that the media shared with us, you know, from my side, I couldn't find fault, but he asked her to leave and he said she was not properly dressed. And we know in South Africa, this is a big problem that at one stage, young women protest at our taxi stands in Joburg even against this, that often when they dress according to the taxi drivers, which are mostly men, the men start to interpret it as sexual. And then they take advantage and they make actually very a lot of remarks and actually derogative kind of language comes in. So Janita, on your side, if you look at working with young people, how do you think it plays out in the cyberbullying space when it comes to harassment?
No, thank you, Leon. Thank you very much for that question. I was thinking as the presenters were speaking that, you know, more than a decade ago, yes, obviously the dress code was different from today because the trends are different. But I also experienced from the church space a big problem. Edith, you mentioned the racist type of harassment that we get. Yes, that is a problem in our country, I think, absolutely. But amongst the young ones, I find the biggest problem to be, firstly, what I want to say is it starts with them with personal contact before it sometimes goes over to cyberbullying and intensifies. What I see with the young people that we help in church and that we minister to in church is that harassment starts under the guise of a joke. And it's this uncomfortable sphere that is being created because it's a joke. No, I touched you inappropriately, the person will say, but it was just a joke. Or no, I made this comment, and then the girl would come and complain to me, for instance, and the perpetrator would say, no, I was just kidding with her. I just thought she was looking pretty. And you see that actually snowballing. If I look back, because that's where it starts, at our young adult group or our youth group. And before I know it, I'm getting messages from this victim, this girl, saying, this guy's not leaving me alone. He's sending me messages all times of the evening. So it starts at some point. And I agree, we cannot tell people the way, we cannot say how they must dress, because they have to have that freedom of expression. I mean, like you, for instance, said, sometimes I've seen ladies being dressed and they looked fine to me in the church service even, and then someone would come and say, oh, but did you see this person was dressing like this? And we have to realize before, like we've said in the previous webinars, we are humans before we are male or female. We have to let them express themselves. So a big problem that is one of the things that we say, it starts at some place. It starts at the church with physical contact, where they meet, where they see each other. And then often it snowballs from a ministerial point of view onto the cyberbullying, and it envelopes out to the school, and when they see each other in town. And that's really when they start gossiping about each other, or the bullying will start. Because if the girl doesn't reciprocate that feelings, the boy will often take offense, or whoever the perpetrator is, and then he'll start spreading stories or lies, or start nitpicking into not only the appearance of the person, but the character. And that is the problem, because that's when the wounds start to form in the soul and the spirit, and then we have a big snowball of a problem. But I also want to add to something that you said, Leon. Pentecostal churches, I know, have this tradition where they hug people. And I always tell people that, when we engage with people, we have to respect their personal space. I have a personal space that I'm comfortable with. And so do all of us. So I enjoyed that comment from you, because I have experienced that, people will just grab each other and hug, not thinking or taking into account, but maybe that person has a certain personal space they want to be respected. So yes, cyberbullying starts with, and I think we should maybe discourage the act of you know, if you come to church, then I want to hug you. And because it causes trouble for the relationships in the congregation as well. We have people that are in relationships that get jealous. Some people are not jealous, but other people get jealous. And it would be a lovely church service. And on Tuesday, I'm sitting with those people in my office because they had a huge fight in their marriage because the woman was being hugged by another man. So I think we should bring about teachings about personal space and about allowing people to have the freedom to express themselves. That's all from me. Over to you, Leon. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, it just shows us at the end of the day that we need to pay attention, you know, that it's not only about personal spaces, it's also about personalities. And that sometimes some of us are also in a space that no, sorry, this is my father-in-law. He's saying hi to all of you.
Hi.
So at the end, I think, you know, this makes us aware that we need to also respect personalities, that my personality is not the same as the person next to me. And that brings us into that. Lizette, I've got a question here from Tracy. She says, as a female, she finds it very difficult to actually confront the person to say, stop, please, you make me really feel uncomfortable. You mentioned 3 aspects that brings it into harassment and even sexual harassment. The first one is the whole thing of the unwanted. And the second one was power. And the third one is feelings. And I think those 3 gives us a bit of a sense that when we feel something unwanted happens, we feel not happy with ourselves or not happy about the situation. But it's also about that power that sometimes people then use that as a kind of a way to also dominate the other or to become superior than the other. Could you just help us maybe to unpack it a bit, that whole thing of unwanted power relationship and this feeling of discomfort to even trauma, please?
Thank you, Leon. And you summarized it so well. Yes, Tracy, you know, when we deal with harassment and all the forms of harassment, we also need to speak about oppression and the dynamics related to oppression, because it's my sense as a society, we were all socialized in a number of ways in very oppressive societies, whether it's the school systems, whether it's the parental homes, where we valued that children must be seen and not heard, as an example. Now, as we grow up, that value stays with us. And often that is where it started. That, I'm so sorry, people are arriving here, so it's not that the audience agree with me this side, it's just natural dog behavior. So we will then definitely make sure that we talk about where did this thing come from that you intuitively, Tracy, feel not okay and uncomfortable about the behavior, but yet you are hesitant to confront it. Now, often the fear that's involved here, the feeling comes in, Leon, can be real. Let's say it's a person that must make a decision about your job security. You will maybe have feelings of fear. And then this is also why the perpetrators is so skillful, because they know the vulnerability. So often it's very difficult to confront, but we can start slow. With what goes with the fear is also the sadness. With the sadness, in any form of harassment, there's an implied loss, a loss of sense of self, a loss of respect for the person that just did what he or she did, a loss for your own dignity. So there's often spaces needed, and people think it's a bit over the top when I say Elizabeth Kubler-Ross work is excellent, that deals with loss and stages of grieving. Because if you let yourself down, it will surface in you. It can manifest even as depression in other ways. So your body can react to that. So we need to be able and be educated to identify the feelings. So if anybody gives you any form of unwanted attention or comments or derogatory, or if it's workplace harassment, you've been bullying, there is impact on your self-esteem. So then your feelings need to be facilitated. One, you need space and time to talk about it. Secondly, you definitely also need to see what do you need to do to address the situation, that you can become peaceful and powerful within yourself. It's very useful that and advisable that you confront the situation and that you stop the behavior. So in that context, it's very important that we pay attention to the feelings, but we also pay attention to the environment we're operating in. I will stop there because the noise levels here might impact on my feelings of irritability at the moment. Thank you.
Do you
Leon.
feel harassed?
I do. And the context, the people don't understand that. So I'm so sorry for that, but I'm on it. Let me just quickly deal with the situation here. Thank you, Leon.
Fine, Lizette. Thank you so much. I think you really touch on so many things, and I hope it helps Tracy to really see how to take a bit of courage. You know, it doesn't need to be a total confrontal. It could be just try to show that through facial expression or body language, even that whatever that person is doing, it's unacceptable. You know. And that sometimes that helps, because sometimes our body can speak volumes that our voices always cannot do. So I'm asking now, Edith, I see there's a question or a discussion a bit about Eva. No, it's very close to Edith. Eva in the chat, she says that often managers, when they feel they cannot control their staff, they become to a space that they start to bully them. And now that we're working so much online, we see this online bullying through emails, meetings, and even this urgency of availability. What is your experience working with workplaces in this regard?
Thank you, Leon, for that. Before I answer Eva, because I noticed Lizette went off very quickly there to attend to the situation. I want to say what you feel, Tracy, and the need to keep silent. I want to just say you're not the only one. You find that a lot of women in the workplace are also not reporting the sexual gender-based violence within the workplace, because generally that's the reason why we call it actually a silent pandemic, because usually there's a lack of proof or a lack of witness. And also because of the power dynamics within the workplace, it's very hard to report somebody who is in a senior position to you at the workplace. And a lot of people don't even know the channels to report, or where to go and get protection, or whether their workplace would support them or not, especially if you're dealing with a very senior member of the team. And then there's always that fear of stigma from colleagues at the workplace to say, why you? And fear of judgment, especially when people feel you've been dressing in a certain way which is inappropriate for the workplace, whether maybe you've been flirting or behaving a bit coquettish. It always comes back to blaming the victim. So sometimes people just don't want to be part of that and just recoil and feel they would rather not report. What this just does is that it creates a culture. It then becomes a culture in that workplace where it becomes normal for not just that perpetrator, but others also in the workplace. And it becomes an organization where generally men feel that they can abuse and take advantage of women. Then coming to Eva's question and on cyber harassment, especially seen more and more with remote work, you find that these are some of the workplace biases that women report, that generally you find that there are penalties of motherhood. Also in this COVID time when people have been working remotely, we've seen that there's a dimension of gender where you actually need to look at gender and how it impacts the work environment. Consider a young working mother working from home. She still has to log on, has to get her work done. But just because you're physically present in the home environment, the children might also be coming to you and expecting you to do certain things or to fulfill certain motherhood duties within the home environment. And you now tend to see women complaining that male supervisors or male team leaders are setting unrealistic timeframes or deadlines, or expecting people to be connected 24/7. Because now we're working from home, your emails, they're available at the touch of a button, and you find that people are experiencing a lot of burnout, even when you wouldn't want to respond to a work email at 10 p.m. If you start getting lots of pings and start seeing male colleagues from the department responding, it sort of sends a message that the women are slacking or not bearing their weight. So women are feeling pressure to balance both. And because people are not logging off, and people are working 24 hours, people are getting emails at 8 p.m. And this is also like impacting on the home environment. Then there's just also corporate cultures where women now report that there is, in a sense, favoritism, where there is a tendency to favor the men within the workplace, and women, there are so many penalties, again, linked to the motherhood duties. Even at entry into the workplace, you find that there seems to be a preference to hire or recruit more young men than women. And young women report that even in interviews, they've been asked, are you married? Are you planning to get married soon? Are you planning to start a family? And the reason why they are asked these questions is because the employer or the supervisor feels that if I employ a young woman, I'm going to lose time, productive time, when she has to go on maternity leave and attend to mothering duties. And you find these penalties are not just for entry into the workspace, but also when they are considering within the workplace promotion opportunities or even training and advancement opportunities, women feel that they are passed over because of their gender. And then, of course, they are just...
Sorry, Edith, I just thought I want to also share, while you're just talking about women, I must also share with you as a man who do not like have children, and even coming into these spaces, not seen as being conventionally married, that that kind of practice from that heterosexual framework, that patriarchal framework, is even going towards men. And we see that it actually starts to affect, and even women who gets into power relations or power positions, doing it against other women, that kind of oppressive behavior and kind of behavior that do not recognize the humanity on the other side. Sorry to interrupt you there. I just want to interject there and just make it a bit gender sensitive.
Yes, exactly, Leon. And when we talk of harassment within the workplace, although we appreciate that a lot of the perpetrators would be men, and that women, of course, are disproportionately affected. But when you also look in the workplace, what you also see is that there is same-sex harassment, where you find that even when women are starting to scale up the corporate ladders, they report that most of the harassment as they get to senior and executive management position actually comes from other women who become unsupportive, who start creating rumors, all kinds of unhealthy rumors to say, oh, she got promoted because she slept with so and so. And it's never about the merit, a woman's merit. It's about what did she do to get that position? What did she do to get into that space? And then you find that generally, when women are now in a position of leadership, the qualities that we generally admire in men as being assertive, they are leading from the front. When women also portray or display the same qualities, leadership qualities, as male colleagues do, you find that they start getting labeled. They are aggressive, they are bossy, that woman is difficult, oh, she's too much, she's awkward. You get that, and women are judged very harshly. So it's like a double jeopardy. So there's many ways in which women face harassment. It can be when they enter leadership, it can be just because they're a woman, and then you can also add that it may be also based on racial undertones, because some women also report that if they're working in white dominated spaces, first they are Black, and entering management, it becomes very difficult. And in fact, a lot of them feel that they are being set up for failure, and they are unsupported in those work environments. So those are some of the reasons generally that people don't report harassment, and why it perpetuates and continues to go on within the workplace. Maybe I'll just end by saying, Leon, that not everybody is a perpetrator. Most people are actually not perpetrators within the workplace context, but our fault is that we notice it happening, and we do nothing about it. So every time you are aware of a young intern who is being sexually harassed by his supervisors within the workplace, being asked to attend social functions, being asked on lunch dates, to come to dinners, that kind of thing, and we don't speak out against it, we are also perpetuating sexual gender-based violence to continue happening within the workplace. So we also need to think about what have we done when we've witnessed it happening to someone else within the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith. I think that last part of you is so important. We spoke about it, that we say silence is violence. And it just makes us aware that we have to step up, even sometimes on behalf of other people, and become the voice for people. So Jonita, I want to ask you, I'm just picking up what Anne is saying, that, we should really bring a space of where people are not discriminated, not judged, and even not isolated, oppressed, or even dehumanized based on who they are. And that means that we have to really come into a space to say also, how do we bring forth this notion, if you don't have anything good to say, keep quiet. So how does it play out specifically, I think, from a religious point of view? Because sometimes religions give us that power that we think we can tell other people how to live and what is good and what is bad. Share with us some ideas?
Absolutely, Leon. Yes, we find that, in the religious space, we find that we use the same scriptures, yet we have so many denominations, because people's opinions differ and their ways of doing ministry differ, and the context in which they understand the Bible differ. But we have to get to a place, we have to create a safe space for people where we deliver what the scriptures say, and they can, through the guidance of the Holy Spirit, discern what it means in context for them. Now, in the church, I've seen that there's not a lot of inclusion of diversity, firstly, and there are many power relationships that we not necessarily can see with the naked eye, but we can discern. that there are people, for instance, I mentioned and I enjoyed Anne's comment here that says we don't have the right to comment on any person's anything. And I want to speak to people who are in the religious space. If you go to your congregation and you receive that message, it's the pastor's job to give you the message, and it's your job to discern the scriptures and apply it to your life. But nobody is there to tell you this and that, and your clothes and your gender choice and your color of skin and your age and because that would be to engage in misconduct, I would say, in a religious space. And the religious space is supposed to be a safe space. It's supposed to be the place that's a hospital for people, a religious hospital. So I see in the churches, and I see also in the workplace, there's not a lot of acceptance of diversity often. I see people still judge each other. I see people still making comments on each other. So we need to maybe bring around this frame of mind, teach people that love and acceptance is the best way to approach anything. Love and acceptance is the best way to open someone's heart to what you have to say. If someone feels that they are judged, immediately you can forget. You are going to speak to a wall, because the moment someone feels judged, they are not going to be open. They're not going to listen to what you are saying. And that's when we have problems with people. If you judge someone by their clothes, making a comment, or even say, why are you part of this religion and not part of that religion? You are in effect, you are judging them, and you lose them. You lose the possible relationship that you can have. Now, I'm thinking back of the ministry. It was frowned upon for a very long time if a woman was also a strong leader in the church, because they would often say, no, she's trying to be the boss of the household. No, she's trying to take the lead. She's trying to show her husband how it's supposed to be done. She wants to be the head of the house. That is not true. We have to accept that there are women that are leaders in the church. I'm just using it as an example, and that they are just living out their calling. They are just living out that anointing, and there's so much ministry that has gone down the drain because women were told, no, women, you are supposed to pour the tea. Now you are supposed to do the tablecloths. And yet she's got this following, and she's got this ministry that she can give to the world. So yes, I agree. I want to read the rest of Anne's comment here. When we comment on someone's clothes, religion, gender choice, color of skin, or age, yes, I agree, Anne, it's mean-spirited. And if you have nothing to say, be good, be quiet. So I think a zero tolerance for this. If we decide that we are going to be agents of change, and we in our personal capacity go out and say, well, if you can't say anything good, then say nothing at all. I think if we start to make a stand like that, it will make a difference. What I do in the church, and I'll share it with the attendees, is if I have people in my congregation and the one person comes to me after the service and says, oh, did you know, or did you see what they were wearing, or did you hear? Then I say, okay, you stop. And I call the person that they are talking about, and I call them into the conversation, and I say, well, would you please like to repeat what you just told me? Let's sort it out together. And 99.9% of the time, that person stands back and says, no, I didn't mean it like that. I was just kidding. So we have to nip it before it becomes something big. If we make a stand for what is right, and if they know they're not going to get away with us with this bad talk about other people, then they will stop in entirety. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you so much. I see Nopobrelo also says she agrees with you, or it might be a man. I do apologize. We need to accept that women can also be strong leaders, specifically in the church, but also in general life. And we should not actually still hold on to some of these values. Lizette, on that note, I want to ask you, when does harassment in the workplace, specifically sexual harassment, how does it affect a person mentally? How does it affect their mental health or their spirituality even?
Thanks, Leon. When you look at the impact, and in our investigations that we do a victim impact assessment. And when we do a victim impact assessment, we can actually have aspects on what we call the wellness wheel, and that includes the following. Emotionally, it severely impacts on the victim, and on sometimes the family. If you work, for instance, and I'm a single mother with a single mother, the stress that she takes from that situation, where does she go with it? She goes home with it. And then it's secondary mental stress for the children or for the family members. So it has a big emotional impact. In a way, women, and I'm going to focus on women a bit, have an intuitive sense of their own emotions. In an oppressive environment, we block that capacity because it's difficult to feel all these things when you feel oppressed. And all forms of harassment is oppressive. It goes for the same to men. So that capacity is being blocked. And then there's dealing with feelings. And unfortunately, in our socialization, we never learned about feelings. In fact, we separated feelings from the workplace. And I think Edith will also agree with me. It was the sense of, you here to work, leave the feelings at home. But that doesn't work because there's no cupboard that you can hang your feelings in. Your feelings travel with you. And the moment when you enter into that space, or even at school, then you need to block that. You need to detach from a part of yourself. So that is very, very stressful. Then health-wise, on the wellness wheel, health-wise, it impacts on physical health in all the aspects. You speak about depression, you speak about all the other aspects of health. It's not only psychosomatic symptoms, but it also can be other physical symptoms, like, for instance, heart conditions and asthma and all of that. It also impacts on overeating for some people and addictions, either alcohol, drugs, or eating, or other forms like shopping and all of that. So it impacts there. Then it also impacts on your mental capacity. Your mental health is directly affected because when we are astute and we are on it and we bright and we feel we comprehend well, then we can't be in an oppressive environment because it dulls our capacity to think clearly. Because you might be able, Tracy, to say, I need to address it. You're cognitively strong enough to know this must be stopped. But emotionally, you're not able to do it, or the environment is not conducive to do it. So you need to block that side of yourself. Hence, we see in students that they sometimes drop out of universities, or they drop out of their school when you talk about child sexual abuse. So it affects that part as well. Then obviously, and I think the experts, you are much more experts than me, spiritually, it does affect you because there's a level of trust and violation that happens that you will ask yourself, but where is God in all of this? Why is this happening to me? So it do impact on your spiritual relationships. And often when the abuse happens in the church environment, it is even more damaging in that department, so to speak, of our sense of self. So if you just look at those dimensions, it impacts environmentally on how well you cope at your house. We also heard stories of coming from work, can't clean, can't do the basic things that keep your living environment healthy. It also impacts financially. Because if you do speak out, that might have still in today, given all our beautiful policies and laws, it might still have a severe consequence on you. And because sexual harassment specifically is so difficult to prove, the burden of proof is very difficult, especially when there's not hard evidence like with rape. If it's only I can't even say that. I actually, sorry, if it's sexual assault where there was touching and there was only 2 people in the room, it's a he say, she say without any witnesses. I also want to come in on the witnesses. Often at the start of the case, when we do the first interviews, there will be a long list of witnesses. When we start interviewing the witnesses, they turn around. So I don't want to be involved. I can't be. My husband is going to be angry because he said I mustn't involve myself with that stuff. Or I might lose my job. Or in a political space that I often see is I don't want to betray my comrades. So then there's no witnesses. And then to lose a case on top of the person that know they had experiences, it's very hard, Leon. So let me stop there. But a person like that needs support. And that's why this conversations is so wonderful, because we are from different spaces and we can support each other to bring wholeness to each person and to organizations.
Thank you, Lizette. That was well said. And I think you really made us aware that, you know, it's not only the short term that we are affected in our mental health when we're experiencing this kind of harassment and even sexual harassment. And, you know, we don't actually talk much, being seen South Africa as sadly sometimes labeled as the rape capital of the world. And it just brings that kind of, why is it like that? What lies behind it? So Edith, on that question, when you look at workplaces, can you share with us some kind of experience from your work with workplaces where you could see that the organizational policies and even culture give sometimes a kind of a righteousness around the issue that this is the way to treat women, or this is the way to treat other men, that leads to the even the space that they can justify, because we know of cases where people are raped at work. And when they report it, the argument is first, she was looking for it, or she was looking to advance her career. And then, you know, the organizational culture would try to justify the behavior of the culprit. And can you share with us how does it sometimes play out in the workplace like that?
Okay, thank you, Leon. Generally, you find that victims or the survivors of harassment, especially sexual harassment in the workplace, they don't report. There is limited reporting because in most workplaces, the support systems are still very weak. And people are afraid of the shame that comes with reporting, and also they're afraid if the employment relationship would continue, because usually the perpetrator is an individual in a position of power and authority. So for those reasons, people don't report. Then they are also considering, the victim would also consider that if I was to report, would this matter be treated fairly? As in most workplaces still place the burden of proof on the victim. Like the previous speaker said, that people find it difficult to say, to show that this happened, because victimization or sexual harassment is not going to happen in an open space. It happens in private spaces. So individuals will then consider that, am I going to be treated fairly? And if there would be an investigation, would it be treated confidentially, and would I not lose my job as a result of this? So you find those are the considerations that victims would be making at a personal level, whether they would proceed with that case or not. And because there would be very few people that would support them, and a lot of businesses still place burden of proof on the victim, which is wrong. It's the perpetrator who must bring proof that they didn't do it because of whatever reasons that they table forward, not the other way around. So those are the issues. But generally what employers are encouraged to do is that they need to have a zero tolerance policy in place, a policy statement that says, at this establishment, at this workplace, we will not tolerate harassment or violence. And why the business would do that? Because let's be honest, businesses exist to make a profit, and you want to create gender-safe workspaces where both men and women can contribute freely to whatever business or productivity that you are working with in your business. And if you have an environment which is toxic, where women feel harassed, where women are experiencing mental health issues and are dreading coming to work, to be sure those individuals are not going to be giving their 100% to that organization, and are always looking for opportunities elsewhere and looking to leave. So it's important that the employer puts in place systems that protect all employees, whether male or female, because we have said, even though women are more affected, we do know that at least 20 to 25% of men also experience harassment within the workplace. So it's about what is it that we can do as employers to create gender neutral and gender safe spaces and protect all our employees. And if there would be a case for harassment, can we give the employees a confidence that the matter will be dealt with fairly, regardless of their job level, and will be treated in confidence, and that the employment relationship will not be terminated because of that case coming up? I'll stop there.
Thank you, Edith. I think you speak ideal to the workplace, that that is actually the only space where there are enough legal mechanisms to actually really prevent it, but also to actually respond to it. And this is why the workplace is such a critical space for really managing things like this, because from the workplace, the person go home, and then they carry on with the behavior, or they come from home and they come into the workplace and they carry on with the behavior. And that's why workplaces should really come into this space and also see that the well-being of employees is also important equally as the bottom line of business. So Jonita, on this context, let's swing it to a bit to kind of how do we move from here? So as a parent, sometimes, our children even come into the habit of teaching or teasing each other. I remember as a child, my sister will sometimes teach me, because I had a bit of big ears and I was very thin, and she will always tease me on that. And then slowly it became a bit of like harassment. And then, my parents always laughed about it, found it very funny. So they even started to tell the jokes when their friends come to visit. Oh, look at our son, he got big ears and he's so thin, he looks like an ostrich. And it has filtered on to actually then become even years of bullying until I could speak out. And I think this is something that even sexually happens between siblings, that there's a kind of a derogative talk between the genders in families. And now that we become now much more aware about transgender and intersex children, how do we navigate this space to actually help our children at a very young age to start changing these kind of attitudes and behaviors?
Absolutely, Leon. Yes, to connect what was said by the other presenters with this question, the current question that I'm going to answer, I want to just add on to Lizette as well. Right in the beginning of the series, we spoke about the body, the soul, and the spirit. And yes, it does affect the whole being. And yes, Edith, it does circle out to the workplace as well. But, you know, with harassment and even with bullying comes pressure. It's pressure that is imposed upon the personhood of that individual. And some people can handle pressure better than other people. Some people, when they are teased, you know, it all comes down to personality, like you've said earlier. Some people brush it off and they're fine because it's their personality. They've got a different focus. But for other people, it makes a wound. It creates a problematic space. And suddenly that individual doesn't feel as safe and as wanted and as loved in their family space. And I think parents often go very wrong here, because I think a form of favoritism also takes place sometimes, because if we don't, for instance, let me use myself as an example, I didn't always really feel like I had the views of the rest of my family. So sometimes I would feel like they were putting me aside a little bit because I didn't see the world the way that they saw it. And that's where the jokes start, and that's where the teasing starts, and that's where the teasing is allowed, is when the parents have the same view as the person that is teasing the other child. So we have to teach our children that differences matter, and that differences are there for a reason, and that it makes life more colorful if we don't see everything the same way. Now, I had with Joshua, and this week I had a activity with him, and the activity was about a horsey that went to play with the other foals, the other horses, and that the friend started laughing at this horsey, and she went home and she said to her mom, I don't understand, all my friends are laughing at me. And she said, well, look in the mirror. This morning you sat in a can of paint because they were painting the stalls. And she said to her mom, but why didn't you tell me before I went to the playground? And her mom said, because I think you look beautiful this way. And the whole story is about accepting that people are different. We don't look the same, we don't think the same, we don't pray the same, we don't experience the world the same way. So we have to, I think, early in the educational system, even more now, because the world is changing, bring in the syllabus and bring in teachers that understand diversity correctly and that give that message that we are all created special. You see, the moment we value each other as human beings, that's the moment that we accept each other, that we can say, okay, well, we're not the same, but we are all important. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you, Anita. And on that note, Lizette, I mean, as we are rated as like the rape capital of the world, it does raise a big question. What do we do if I have been raped? And I even talk as a man, because the studies that have shown 1 out of 5 men have actually been have experienced rape or some attempt to be penetrated by another man or by a foreign object, and we just don't talk about it. We silence about it because it is not our manhood to actually acknowledge that these things happen. But how do we start to curb this kind of tendency of a silence of rape? What would we do as kind of baby steps to actually take action?
Thank you, Leon. And thank you for bringing in the men. I wouldn't say the men rape or men on men violence, but what we see from the data is men who are subjected to rape and sexual assault, it's often extremely brutal, extremely brutal. And then also the shame component is even worse, and that's why it takes such a long time for victims to talk about it. So we must never ever underestimate that level of brutality. So I just wanted to, what do we do? I think that the pathway for rape is very clear, that you need to report it, you need the South African Police Service involved, you need to go to a trusted person, tell your story, and then hopefully that person will have the capacity, the knowledge and understanding to guide you in what to do, but talk to somebody about it. The second thing that we need to go very strong on, it's awareness and conversations from preschool, not preschool, from school to tertiary, to workplace, and we can never ever talk enough about it. Then in our places of work, we need to transform the culture in a way that people can comfortably disclose. So there need to be a zero tolerance, but also effective support structures, that if a person speaks out, there will be a process that will give them support and that they won't secondary be victimized. But we are a long way from there, and it's in ongoing engagements like this that we need to speak about it. Often people ask, but why are we the rape capital? Why are we the country with some of the highest intimate partner violence statistics in the world? It's because of our tolerance for it. And it's because of the complexity of dynamics that on the one hand, you love this person, and on the other hand, you need to report this person. And it's never an easy thing to do. And the big question, who will believe you? Often with oppressive family environments, work environments, society environments, the perpetrators has much more power than the victims. So we need to make sure that if we do create a space and awareness that people speak out, that we will be able to give the necessary support, because it can have an opposite effect if we don't do that. So that's just shortly from me.
Thank you, Lizette. So it just really means we need to start listening to each other, because sometimes the signs are there before showing that this is going to happen, and we just ignore it. We don't hear the other. Edith, in 1 minute in the workplace, if I come to my manager and I say to him or her that I feel harassed and I feel that there's a possibility that I can even be raped in the workplace, what would be 3 steps that a line manager, not the top manager, but the line manager, who's often the first line of reporting, what can be done? 3 quick steps, please.
Thank you, Leon. I think when a line manager gets a report of an incident of harassment or sexual or gender-based violence within the workplace, is to give that individual time to explain the incident. What happened? Was it isolated, or were there many instances? That's the first thing that they can do. And the second thing is they can promise the individual to quietly investigate and give them feedback. It's important to then call for a follow-up meeting to say, I have looked into the matter, or I have spoken to the perpetrator concerned, and this was his take. So after that first meeting, the manager would also call in the perpetrator and say, we have received this complaint from this individual. Are you aware that they don't like that behavior? They don't like how you harass them, or how or whether it's comments or touching or whatever it is, the behavior that they displayed. And at that point, you are just giving that individual an opportunity to stop and desist with that behavior, that they will not continue with it, and to offer an apology. That's step number 2. And in step number 3, the victim should be given an opportunity to accept that the perpetrator was not aware that they didn't like this attention, or they want them to stop it, and they can either accept that, and if not, they can decide to continue further and say they want to pursue disciplinary procedures. That should be offered to the individual, and that's the starting point. But more importantly, I think line managers should just raise awareness within the workplace on what constitutes harassment, both non-sexual as well as sexual gender-based violence, so that when a case is reported, you never get a response of, I didn't know that this was harassment. So the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that we train our people.
Edith, sorry to interject again. We're running out of time. I'm going to hand over to you, Anita, just to wrap up for this session, and then to also do a bit of word of thanks. Sorry for that, Edith.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, Leon, for your wonderful emceeing today. We really appreciate it. We enjoyed the session. Panel, you are fantastic. We value your knowledge, and attendees. I mean, everything that we've discussed in dialogue today, it's just helping us to, like Leon said, scratch deeper underneath that surface and to get to a place where we can really deal with these hard issues. Edith, I agree with Leon. We would love to still continue with our discussion. So in our next session, I see we did run out of time. So just from the Golden Key Southern Africa head office, thank you to everyone that attended. We are enjoying this webinar series tremendously, and we know that it's going to have a far-reaching effect. We are going to have our next session on Monday. I just want to give you the topic for Monday. It would be the 27th of September. From 1 o'clock, and the topic is critical interventions towards the prevention of gender-based violence. So thank you to all our faithful attendees. We hope to see you there on Monday, and may everybody have a blessed and a safe long weekend. You may now exit this session by clicking the leave button at the right bottom end of your screen. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.